In 1872, the HMS Challenger was dredging the floor of the Pacific Ocean at a depth of 4,300 meters, roughly 14,000 feet, when sailors hauled up something that had no business looking the way it did. Two shark teeth, large, triangular, serrated, and, to the naturalists on board, suspiciously fresh. Sir John Murray, one of the expedition's lead scientists, examined them and reached a conclusion that would echo through popular culture for the next 150 years. These teeth belonged to a shark that might still be alive. The creature we now call Otodus Megalodon, the largest predatory fish to have ever existed, had supposedly been extinct for millions of years. And yet here were its teeth, pulled from the deep Pacific, looking far too intact to be ancient. Murray was wrong. But understanding why he was wrong tells us something far more interesting than the myth he accidentally created. When those teeth were subjected to modern uranium series radiometric dating in the 20th century, the results came back between 11 and 24 million years old. Not recent, not even close. The ocean floor preserves teeth through a process called mineral replacement, where the original material is slowly exchanged for whatever compounds surround it in the sediment. In this case, manganese crust, which accumulates unevenly and can make a tooth look far younger than it is. Murray didn't have the tools to know this, but we do, and yet the myth held. In 1918, Australian naturalist David Stead documented reports from experienced fishermen near Broughton Island, New South Wales, who claimed to have encountered a white shark of impossible size. Some estimated 35 meters, or roughly 115 feet, and flatly refused to return to the water. Stead published their accounts in his 1963 book, Sharks and Rays of Australian Seas, and the legend of a living megalodon grew a little taller. Let's be precise about what the actual fossil record says. Megalodon teeth have been recovered from marine sediment on every continent except Antarctica. Thousands of specimens, spanning sites from Calvert Cliffs in Maryland to the Atacama Desert in Chile, from Malta to Morocco to the coastal deposits of New Zealand and Japan. Individual teeth reach up to 18 centimeters in length, roughly the span of an adult human hand. A single shark shed an estimated 40,000 teeth across its lifetime, which means the ocean floor is seeded with them. And here is the critical point. Not one confirmed megalodon tooth has ever been recovered from sediment layers younger than 3.6 million years old. The dating has been replicated across multiple sites, multiple methods, multiple research teams, and yet zero teeth. Zero bones or bite marks on modern whale carcasses. No sonar signature in any ocean basin on Earth. Megalodon is gone. Now the question is not whether, but why. What we have to work with is surprisingly substantial, given that sharks are built from cartilage rather than bone, a skeleton that almost never survives the fossilization process. What paleontologists have found across 150 years of fieldwork amounts to teeth, occasional vertebral centra, calcified segments of the spine, and one extraordinary partial vertebral column unearthed in Belgium, comprising 150 individual centra. That Belgian specimen remains the most complete structural evidence we possess. Everything else we know about how Megalodon moved, hunted, and reproduced has been reconstructed from those fragments and the geometry of its teeth. From those fragments, the picture that emerges is of an animal that ruled the world's oceans for nearly 20 million years. Consider that figure for a moment. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. If Megalodon's reign were compressed into a single calendar year, our entire species would occupy approximately 5.5 days of it. That is what makes the extinction so worth understanding. Not just the scale of the animal, but the scale of its success and what it took to end it. And today we will understand about this creature in detail. Welcome to Deep Ocean Unsolved, where we share deep ocean documentaries. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Now let's get back to the video. The name Megalodon comes from the Greek mega, meaning large, and odon, meaning tooth. It is not the most creative of names, but it is accurate. For most of the 20th century, size estimates for Megalodon veered toward the theatrical. Early reconstructions placed the animal at up to 30 meters, nearly 100 feet, largely because scientists had borrowed body proportions from the great white shark and scaled them up to match the largest known teeth. The problem with that approach became clear once the taxonomy was corrected. Megalodon is not a giant great white. It belongs to an entirely separate family, Otodontidae, and its closest living relative is not Carcharodon carcharius, but something far more distantly related. The resemblance in tooth shape is convergent evolution, two different sharks arriving at similar solutions for similar ecological problems. Their actual relationship is closer to that of a fox and a thylacine than a parent and a child. In 2019, paleontologist Kenshu Shimada of DePaul University published revised body length estimates in the journal Historical Biology, drawing on vertebral centra measurements and tooth root dimensions rather than great white proportions. The result was more conservative and considerably more reliable. A typical adult megalodon measured between 14 and 16 meters, 46 to 52 feet, with the largest documented individuals possibly reaching 20 meters or 65 feet. Even at the conservative end, that is more than twice the length of the largest great white shark ever recorded, which measured approximately 6 meters. In terms of mass, estimates range from 50 to 100 metric tons. The largest great white ever weighed around 2.2 metric tons. A sperm whale, the ocean's largest living predator, reaches roughly 45, but size alone doesn't explain 20 million years of dominance. To understand that, we need to look at two things: what Megalodon ate and a 2023 discovery that changed how we understand everything about its physiology. The hunting evidence comes primarily from fossil whale bones, specifically bones bearing Megalodon bite marks at confirmed sites including the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, where ancient marine sediments have yielded dense concentrations of whale skeletons surrounded by shed Megalodon teeth. These were feeding sites. The same coastal shelf was being revisited again and again by an animal that clearly knew where its prey could be found. What the bite marks themselves reveal is more specific. Research published in PeerJ in 2019 by Robert Bosenecker of the College of Charleston and colleagues showed that Megalodon bite marks concentrate on whale ribs, shoulders, flippers, and vertebrae, the structural skeleton, rather than the soft tissue that a great white targets first. Megalodon was not simply biting where it could reach. It was biting to destroy locomotion, crush the flipper structure, fracture the ribs, disable the animal's ability to swim, and then feed at leisure. The estimated bite force that made this possible has been calculated at between 108 to 500 and 182 to 200 newtons. A great white bites at roughly 18,000 newtons. A Tyrannosaurus rex at approximately 57,000. Megalodon's jaw, capable of opening to roughly 2 to 3 meters wide, 6.5 to nearly 10 feet, generated more crushing force than any other animal we have evidence of, living or extinct. Now for the 2023 discovery. For decades, Megalodon was assumed to be ectothermic, cold-blooded, its body temperature set by the surrounding water. A team led by Jeremy McCormack at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology upended that assumption entirely, using a technique called clumped isotope analysis, examining the bonding ratios of oxygen-18 and carbon-13 atoms locked inside fossilized tooth enamel at the moment the tooth was formed. The researchers were able to calculate Megalodon's actual body temperature while it was alive. Their findings, published in Nature, Volume 6/17 in 2023, showed that Megalodon maintained a body temperature approximately 7 degrees Celsius, or 13 degrees Fahrenheit, above the surrounding ocean water. This is called regional endothermy, or mesothermy. the same system used by modern great white sharks and mako sharks, where metabolic heat is retained in core musculature and organs rather than dissipating into the sea. For a great white, this system provides speed and sustained hunting capacity. For a 15-meter, 50 to 100-ton animal maintaining the same thermal state, the caloric cost is staggering. And here is where perfection begins to carry its own risk. An endothermic megalodon needed to eat enormously, and it needed to eat consistently. A cold-blooded animal can slow its metabolism during lean periods, surviving weeks or months without a large meal. A warm-bodied megalodon could not afford that flexibility. Its thermal system had to be continuously fueled. Trophic position analysis published in Nature Communications, Volume 13 in 2022 by McCormack and colleagues confirmed using nitrogen isotopes in fossilized teeth that Megalodon occupied the highest feeding level of any predator in its ecosystem, consuming large marine mammals as its primary caloric source. Remove that prey base, or cool the oceans where it lived, and this animal, the most powerful predator in the history of the sea, faced a problem it had never encountered in 20 million years of dominance. It was about to starve. At Megalodon's peak, somewhere between 10 and 15 million years ago, during the Middle to Late Miocene epoch, the Earth was substantially warmer than it is today. Global average temperatures ran 3 to 8 degrees Celsius higher. Sea levels were elevated, flooding vast shallow continental shelves with warm coastal water. The ancient Tethys Sea, a broad, shallow marine corridor stretching across what is now the Middle East and southern Europe, still connected the Mediterranean basin to the Indian Ocean, providing migratory routes for both Megalodon and the whale species it depended on. The family Cetatheridae, small baleen whales, the primary prey Megalodon relied upon most heavily, was extraordinarily diverse during this period. Dozens of species populated the warm coastal shallows of every ocean basin. They were, in the simplest terms, Megalodon's food supply, and they were abundant. Then, across a span of roughly 2 million years, that world began to dismantle itself. The first and most consequential geological event was one we are still feeling the effects of today. For tens of millions of years, a shallow marine corridor had separated North and South America, the Central American Seaway, sometimes called the Panama Seaway. Marine animals, including whales and sharks, moved freely between the Atlantic and Pacific through this gap. The two ocean basins functioned biologically as a single interconnected system. Between 8 and 10 million years ago, tectonic movement began pushing the seaway closed. By approximately 4 million years ago, the flow had been reduced to a trickle. By 3.5 to 3 million years ago, the Americas were fully joined, and the Atlantic and Pacific were severed from one another permanently. What followed was not what you might expect. Closing an ocean corridor does not simply isolate two bodies of water. It rewires the circulation of both. With the seaway gone, warm equatorial water that had previously flowed freely into the Pacific was now deflected northward along the eastern coastline of North America. The Gulf Stream intensified. That stream carried warm, moisture-laden air into the North Atlantic, where it collided with cold Arctic systems and fell as snow, particularly over Greenland. More snow meant more ice. More ice meant more sunlight reflected back into space, which cooled the planet further. The closure of the Panama Seaway did not cause a small regional change. It triggered the beginning of the Pleistocene ice ages. For Megalodon, the consequences were threefold, and each one fed the others. First, the ocean cooled. Paleoclimate records show that average ocean surface temperatures in mid-latitude zones dropped by 4 to 7 degrees Celsius between 5 million and 2.6 million years ago. Megalodon, as the 2023 isotope study showed, was adapted to warm water. It maintained a body temperature 7 degrees above ambient, which means in warm water it was operating within its thermal comfort zone. In water that had cooled by 4 to 7 degrees, that maintenance cost escalated sharply, and the warm coastal habitats that constituted its range contracted toward the tropics. Second, the nursery areas disappeared. Research by Catalina Pimiento of Swansea University, one of the world's foremost megalodon researchers, identified confirmed nursery sites at the Gatun Formation in Panama, the Calvert Formation in Maryland, and the Huelva region of Spain, each characterized by concentrations of small Megalodon teeth, indicating these warm, shallow, protected bays were where females gave birth and juveniles spent their earliest years. As ocean temperatures dropped, those bays cooled. The warm, sheltered coastal environments that pups required ceased to exist across much of Megalodon's former range. And this mattered because of a biological reality that sits at the heart of Megalodon's vulnerability. A female Megalodon carried an estimated 1 to 5 pups per pregnancy, with gestation lasting over a year. Sexual maturity came at approximately 25 years of age. This is a reproductive schedule that offers no margin for rapid recovery. Lose the nursery habitats, and you do not slow population growth. You stop it. Third, the prey collapsed. The Cetotheriidae, which had fueled Megalodon's reign for millions of years, underwent catastrophic diversity loss during the Pliocene. From dozens of species distributed across every warm ocean basin, the family contracted to near extinction. Today, a single species survives, the pygmy right whale, Caparea marginata, of the Southern Ocean. A 2016 study published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution by Pimiento and colleagues quantified the broader scale of what was happening. Approximately 36% of all large marine genera went extinct during the Pliocene. Megalodon was not facing a targeted threat. It was sitting at the apex of a food pyramid that was collapsing from the base upward. By the time the prey that remained had migrated to colder, polar-rich waters to survive, waters too cold and too energetically costly for a warm-bodied coastal predator to exploit effectively, Megalodon's geographic range had contracted by an estimated 55%. That figure comes from a landmark 2014 analysis by Pimiento and Charles Clements, published in PLOS ONE, which mapped every confirmed Megalodon fossil occurrence against its dated sediment layer. The retreat is documented, measurable, and relentless. The planet had not targeted Megalodon. It had simply changed, and the animal had been shaped by 20 million years of stability into something that could not change with it. There is a timing coincidence in the fossil record that deserves more attention than it typically receives. As Megalodon fossils thin out and disappear from higher latitudes across the early Pliocene, two other predators are expanding their presence in precisely those same waters. One is familiar. The other remade the ocean's apex ecology entirely. The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias, is not, as was long assumed, a descendant of Megalodon. Its lineage traces to a different ancestor entirely, likely Isurus hastalis, an ancient mako-type shark with broad, unserrated teeth. Great whites appear in the fossil record as a distinct, established predator around 5 million years ago, just as Megalodon's decline begins to accelerate, and their fossils become increasingly abundant through the early Pliocene. The two animals overlapped. They shared habitat. They targeted the same prey. But the comparison between them was never a straight fight. It was a question of efficiency in a depleted system. Consider what each animal needed to function. A great white shark, cold water tolerant and metabolically flexible, can operate across a broad temperature range, roughly 12 to 24 degrees Celsius, and exploit a wide spectrum of prey, from seals and sea lions to dolphins, large fish, and small whales. It can subsist on a fur seal when a larger meal is unavailable. A megalodon, maintaining a body temperature 7 degrees above ambient and weighing between 50 and 100 metric tons, required the caloric equivalent of a large whale with regularity. It could not pivot downward to smaller prey without a sustained metabolic deficit. In a collapsing ecosystem, the animal that can eat what remains survives. The one built only for what is disappearing does not. The great white was not stronger than Megalodon. It was smaller, more flexible, and better suited to the ocean the Pliocene was becoming. In an ecosystem context, that is a decisive advantage, not in any single encounter, but across generations of population pressure on shared prey resources. The second competitor is more instructive still. Orcas, Orcinus orca, diverged from their closest relatives and began diversifying their cooperative hunting strategies during the Pliocene. The ancestors of modern killer whales were developing something no solitary predator could match: coordinated group pursuit, the ability to communicate and divide roles mid-hunt, the capacity to learn and transmit new hunting techniques across generations. A pod of orcas hunting cooperatively can exhaust prey that no individual predator could run down, can pursue large whales into ice-margined polar waters, and can exploit species and habitats that a solitary predator is structurally prevented from accessing. We have a modern data point for how this plays out. Orcas today actively hunt and kill adult great white sharks, removing their livers with apparent precision and discarding the rest. If the ocean's current apex shark is actively displaced by orca predation in certain regions today, the competitive pressure that expanding Pliocene orca populations exerted on a megalodon already weakened by prey scarcity and habitat loss is not difficult to reason through. There is a third animal worth noting, though its story ends differently. Leviathan melvillei was a predatory sperm whale, not the filter-feeding giant of the modern ocean, but a toothed, actively hunting leviathan with functional teeth in both upper and lower jaws, estimated at up to 36 centimeters, or roughly 14 inches in length. Its nearly complete skull was discovered in 2010 in the Pisco Ica Desert of Peru, ancient marine sediment now exposed by erosion, and dated to approximately 12 to 13 million years ago. At an estimated 13 to 17 meters in length, it was Megalodon's contemporary and, in warm Miocene waters, its competitor for large whale prey. Leviathan went extinct at approximately the same time as Megalodon. That parallel disappearance matters. If a competitor had killed Megalodon, we would expect the competitor to survive and flourish. Instead, both apex predators of the warm Miocene-Pliocene ocean vanished within the same geological window. The cause was not one predator displacing another. The world they both depended on ceased to exist, and neither of them could follow it into the cold. In 2016, physicist Anton Wallner of the Australian National University led a team that published findings in Nature, Volume 532, from an analysis of deep-sea sediment cores collected from multiple sites across the Pacific Ocean floor. Locked inside sediment layers dating to between 2.6 and 3.2 million years ago, the team found something that does not belong on Earth. Iron-60. Iron-60 is a radioactive isotope that does not occur in significant concentrations through any natural terrestrial process. There is one known mechanism that produces it in abundance: a supernova, the violent collapse and detonation of a massive star at the end of its life. The Iron-60 in those Pacific sediment cores could only have arrived one way. It rained down from space. A star, possibly more than one, exploded within approximately 150 light-years of our solar system, and the debris cloud from that explosion washed slowly over Earth across millions of years, settling into the ocean floor and leaving a radioactive signature that geologists can still read today. The Iron-60 signature has since been confirmed in Atlantic Ocean cores, in samples from the lunar surface, and in cosmic ray records preserved in Antarctic ice. The supernova is not a hypothesis. The explosion happened. The timing is fixed. What is still being worked out is what it did to life on Earth. In 2019, physicist Adrian Malott of the University of Kansas and Brian Thomas of Washburn University published an analysis in Astrobiology, Volume 19, Issue 4, modeling the biological effects of the radiation event on marine ecosystems. The mechanism runs as follows. A nearby supernova floods the solar system with high-energy cosmic rays. Those cosmic rays interact with Earth's atmosphere to produce muons, subatomic particles that carry enough energy to penetrate not just the atmosphere, but several hundred meters of seawater. During the peak of this particular radiation event, Malott and Thomas estimated that muon levels at Earth's surface reached approximately 150% above the normal background. And those elevated muons would have irradiated marine animals throughout the coastal shelf zone Megalodon inhabited. The effect is not uniform across body sizes. A small organism with rapid reproduction can cycle through generations quickly enough for natural selection to favor radiation-resistant individuals. A large, slow-reproducing animal accumulates mutation burden over its long lifespan without the biological machinery to compensate. More cells means more targets. A longer life means more cumulative exposure. And for an animal that took 25 years to reach sexual maturity and carried 1 to 5 pups per pregnancy, the consequences of elevated cancer rates and reproductive failures compound across generations in ways that a faster reproducing species simply weathers. The timing is worth sitting with. The supernova radiation event peaked between 2.6 and 3.2 million years ago. Megalodon's youngest confirmed fossils, as established by Pimiento and Clements in their 2014 PLOS ONE analysis and refined by Bosennecker and colleagues in a 2019 Peer study using rigorous stratigraphic dating, cluster around 3.6 million years ago. The radiation event did not precede the extinction. It overlapped with the final decline. Most paleontologists consider the supernova a contributing pressure rather than a primary cause. That is the measured and scientifically defensible position. A population being squeezed simultaneously by cooling oceans, collapsing prey, destroyed nursery habitats, and expanding competitors is already under extraordinary stress. Elevated radiation increasing cancer burden and reproductive failure in the remaining individuals does not need to have killed Megalodon on its own. It needed only to have helped push a population that was already failing past the point where recovery was possible. There is something quietly vertiginous about this. A star exploded 150 light-years away, a distance so vast it takes light itself 150 years to cross it, and the fallout may have nudged the last surviving populations of the ocean's greatest predator toward extinction. The universe is not indifferent to life on Earth. It simply operates on scales that make our own seem very small. By approximately 4 million years ago, Megalodon was already retreating. Its fossils in high-latitude sites, northern Europe, the northern Pacific, the southern tip of South America, had stopped appearing. The range that had once stretched across every ocean on the planet had contracted toward the tropics, compressing into the narrowing band of warm water that was all the cooling Pliocene ocean still offered. But retreat is not extinction. A species can survive within a reduced range indefinitely, provided that range remains viable. What happened in the final million years, the passage from declining to gone, is where population biology becomes the story. Ecologist Warder Clyde Alley identified in the early 20th century a dynamic that now bears his name. The Alley effect describes what happens when a population drops below a critical minimum threshold. Rather than stabilizing at a lower level, the decline accelerates. The mechanisms are not complicated. Individuals become too sparsely distributed to locate mates reliably across vast ocean expanses. Breeding seasons pass without successful reproduction. Genetic diversity narrows across each generation, reducing fitness and immune function. And the smaller the population, the faster all of these effects compound. For Megalodon, the alley effect would have been a slow-motion collapse spread across hundreds of thousands of years. Each generation slightly less successful than the last. Each shrinking population making the next reproductive cycle marginally less likely to succeed. The warm-bodied metabolism that required constant large prey consumption meant that any individual failing to hunt successfully over an extended period was not just hungry, it was in physiological crisis. The youngest confirmed Megalodon fossils, as established through the stratigraphic analysis by Bosennecker and colleagues in PeerGeo in 2019, cluster in tropical and subtropical zones, the Indo-Pacific and tropical Atlantic regions that retained warmth longest. This is exactly what we would expect to see from a species whose viable habitat was compressing toward the equator as everything else cooled. The last populations were not spread across the global ocean. They were the remnants of an empire, confined to its final corners. Somewhere in those tropical waters, between 3.6 and 2.6 million years ago, the last Megalodon died. We do not know where. We do not know whether it was young or old. There is no fossil that marks the moment, no special layer of sediment, no commemorative deposit. The record simply goes silent. The youngest confirmed tooth was shed from a living animal, fell to the seafloor, and was eventually buried. And then there were no more. What followed in the oceans is worth noting because it tells us something about what Megalodon's presence had meant. In the Pleistocene epoch, after the extinction, blue whales, Balænoptera musculus, grew to their modern proportions, up to 30 meters or nearly 100 feet in length, and as heavy as 180 metric tons. They are the largest animals known to have existed. And the question that researchers have begun asking is whether they could have reached those sizes while Megalodon was alive. Megalodon's hunting strategy, as the bite mark record shows, explicitly targeted large whales by attacking their structural skeleton. An evolving lineage of increasingly large baleen whales would have been increasingly attractive prey, not increasingly safe. With Megalodon gone, that evolutionary pressure lifted. The ocean's largest animals, freed from the most powerful predator in its history, may have grown to sizes that were simply not viable before. Great white sharks expanded into the coastal predator niche. Orcas consolidated their dominance in cold and temperate waters, and the ecosystem reorganized itself around their very different capabilities: smaller, faster, more flexible, pack-hunting intelligence replacing solitary bulk. We are living in the ocean that Megalodon's absence made possible. There is one final observation that the fossil record forces us to make, and it is not a comfortable one. The forces that dismantled Megalodon's world, cooling oceans, prey collapse, shrinking coastal habitat, disrupted circulation patterns, are processes we recognize. A 2021 study published in Nature by Pakuro and colleagues documented that global populations of oceanic sharks and rays have declined by 71% since 1970. Great white shark populations have dropped by a comparable margin. Industrial whaling across the 20th century reduced most large whale populations by between 66 and 90%. Collapsing within a century the prey base that modern ocean predators depend on at a pace that makes even the Pliocene dramatic reorganization look gradual. Coastal nursery habitats for sharks, sea turtles, and dolphins are being degraded by development, pollution, and ocean acidification on every inhabited coastline. And ocean temperatures are rising at rates that have no analog in the geological record of the past several million years. Megalodon took roughly 1 to 2 million years to decline from a globally distributed apex predator to a tropically confined remnant to nothing. We are compressing comparable ecological pressures into decades. The Megalodon tooth is an 18-centimeter piece of fossilized enamel. Pick one up in a museum, and you are holding the remains of an animal that outlasted most of the species that have ever lived on this planet, that survived tectonic shifts and ice ages and the slow grinding of geological time, and was ultimately undone not by a single catastrophe, but by the accumulation of changes it could not adapt to fast enough. That story did not end 3.6 million years ago. It is still being written in the oceans we have now.